Ladies and gentlemen, we have our weekly AP Top 25 updated here. I'm going to give my instant reaction like I always do, splitting it up into 4 different sections. So the AP voters I feel like they're split on what they want to do. Now they have Georgia as the number 1 overall team, which is just hilarious. Ohio State at number 2, Alabama falling down to number 3 after their narrow win against Texas A&M. They were 24-point favorites. They were playing their backup quarterback, Bryce Young, out, probably more precautionary, but Bama falls down to 3. Georgia at number 1, I'm guessing their only justification for putting Georgia at this point in the season at number 1 goes all the way back to week 1 and Georgia's grand trouncing over Oregon. I'm guessing that's the only justification at this point if you want to put Georgia over Ohio State. Guys, there's a big false narrative going around, and it's happening with a lot of college, casual college football fans who really don't read up on stuff. They say Ohio State doesn't have a good win. Guys, Notre Dame is a good football team. I know they lost to Marshall. They've rebounded. They're a solid team. Every analytical metric data point will tell you that Notre Dame's actually a top 25 team. So I do think Ohio State at least has one decent win. I would have Ohio State number 1, probably Alabama 2, Georgia 3. But they've got Georgia getting 32 first-place votes, Ohio State getting 20, Alabama getting 11. What I'll say is Georgia's defense is a little bit better than Ohio State's defense, but Ohio State's offense is so much better than Georgia's offense. I think there's a clear separation. This just feels like they have no clue what they're doing, the way they split these first-place votes, going with Georgia at number 1, Ohio State and Alabama. Georgia and Ohio State both covered their large spreads. Georgia beating Auburn, kind of backdoor covering at the end. That game was 14-0, I believe, at the half. Ohio State just trouncing Michigan State. They very easily could have scored 60-plus points. They stopped trying with 3 minutes left in the third quarter. And then Alabama, there's a major question mark. We want to make sure Bryce Young is healthy. I do think he'll be okay. It was probably a situation where Saban didn't want to risk anything, be precautionary with the shoulder injury. You're 24-point favorites at home. You've got a quarterback who's young. And guys, that Alabama A&M game, if Bryce Young is playing in it, I think it's probably a 28-point Alabama victory. And the reason I say that is because if you actually look at that game and the way A&M scored, it's mainly off of Alabama turnovers by their backup quarterback due to inexperience, the fumbles, the interceptions, things like that. But the question does remain with Alabama football. Do they have the wide receivers to really challenge defenses? I'm still waiting for that Bryce Young game where these receivers break out and Bryce Young throws for 375 and, 3 or 4 touchdowns. We still haven't seen that. I am basically guaranteeing that Bryce Young will be back for this game at Tennessee. I would be shocked if he's not. I feel like something would really have to go wrong in practice with his shoulder. Seems like they knew this Tennessee game was going to be huge. Be careful. You can beat A&M at home without him. 24-point favorites. Those are the top 3, Georgia, Ohio State, Alabama. We have Clemson moving up to number 4. So Michigan struggling with Indiana a little bit. Might have knocked them down, although Clemson and Michigan were very close in terms of their overall points. Clemson just has too many quality wins at this point compared to what Michigan's done on their resume. And again, Michigan, the close game against Maryland. Indiana, you can say, close game in the first half. Michigan's defensive line dominated in the second half. There's no doubt about that. But I do like that. I would put Clemson. If we're talking about what have we seen on the field in terms of resume, compiling it all together, I would say Clemson 4, Michigan 5. They've got Tennessee up to number 6. I'm not a fan of dropping USC down 1. I think USC had a very solid win against a decent Washington State team. They covered. Their defense looked good. But I understand trying to hype up that Tennessee versus Alabama game as much as possible. And Tennessee did crush LSU. I will say, as a caveat, Tennessee probably got the greatest break in college football on any single play. If you guys go back to that first play of the Tennessee LSU game, I believe LSU fumbled the ball. So basically, Tennessee started the first half and the second half with possession of the football. That is the greatest break you will ever get. And also, LSU had no business being ranked. The AP voters threw LSU a bone last week, ranking them. I said Jane Daniels. I wasn't impressed from with what I've seen from him. And LSU is going to be a 4 or 5 loss team this year. But they've got Tennessee up to 6, so that will be a 1v6 matchup between Tennessee and Alabama. They go with USC at number 7. We're all expecting USC to have a crazy, upset loss that we weren't see coming. We'll see if it happens. USC does get Utah on the road this week. I do think they will be slight favorites. Utah down significantly after their loss. Oklahoma State's at number 8. Ole Miss at number 9. I think Ole Miss is extremely overrated. They struggled with Vanderbilt in the first half and then really had to go try hard in the second half to try and make it seem like they blew them out. I mean, we saw this several times yesterday with Michigan, Ole Miss, Georgia to a lesser degree, where these teams struggle in the first half and then they go super try hard in the fourth quarter to try and make it seem like, oh, if you don't watch the game, Ole Miss beats Vanderbilt by 26 or whatever it was, or 30 points, when in reality it was a struggle, because it was a struggle in the first half. Penn State at number 10, they had a bye week. They've got that major big noon matchup going to Ann Arbor against Michigan. That will be a 10v5 game now. Moving to number 11, you've got UCLA moving up to 7 spots. Certainly, it's well-deserved. It's a big win at home against Utah, and UCLA did outplay Utah. Chip Kelly, one of the more underappreciated coaches, kind of has had a weird career being the offensive college guru, going to the NFL, having major success that 1 year with Philadelphia and Mark Sanchez, and then completely flopping in the NFL, coming back down, and now he's resurrected this UCLA team. It's so inspiring. Oregon at number 12. Oregon is the exact reason Georgia is ranked first. TCU at number 13. They're up 4 spots. I want to caution people on TCU. I do see them losing a minimum of 3 games in the regular season. Guys, that'll be one of my semi-bold predictions. They are 5-0 right now. They're not making a New Year's Six Bowl, TCU. I don't even think that's bold. I just think we all understand the parity right now in the Big 12 Conference, and TCU is going to run into that. They already had their bye week. They've got multiple tough games upcoming. Wake Forest at number 14. They held serve against Army. NC State down a spot to number 15. Really had a tough, hard-fought win against Florida State at home. They didn't cover the spread, but it's good enough. Just win the game. You were 3-point favorites. You win. I think 19-17, lower scoring game. Mississippi State up 7 spots. Not sure really why. They beat Arkansas at home without KJ Jefferson. So I'm not sure that warrants moving up 7 spots. I do understand a lot of the analytical models do like Mississippi State as like a top 15 team. Maybe that was the reason. And it was a blowout victory. Will Rogers is one of the more underrated quarterbacks in college football for sure. Kansas State's up to number 17. They got that really low scoring 1-point win, 10-9 over Iowa State, I believe on the road. So that was a big win for them. It's certainly any win you can get on the road in the Big 12 is important. Syracuse up 4 spots up to number 18, with the bye week. I think Syracuse is starting to get a little bit overranked at this point at number 18 personally. We will see. They've got a big game at home versus NC State, so certainly this is a great spot in the Carrier Dome. I believe it's 3:30, but up 4 spots in a bye week. I mean, you can kind of say maybe other teams lose, but still, I don't know about Syracuse. I think they're going to start losing. Kansas at number 19. So Kansas, I believe, stayed right where they were. They had the injury to the quarterback. They had the tough loss to TCU at home. They did outgain TCU by about 100 yards. So it's understandable to leave Kansas alone. I am expecting, with the Big 12 being a complete gauntlet, a lot of really good teams, no great teams in the Big 12. These teams are going to cannibalize each other. Kansas is going to lose several times. And they've got kind of a weird game at Oklahoma that they might actually be favored in. We'll see whether or not Dylan Gabriel plays. Utah down to number 20, so they are down 9 spots. I do like that the voters kept them ranked. Let's not overreact. This is still a good team. They're 4-2. They outgained UCLA. They just lost on the road. It is what it is. Actually really disappointed in Utah's defense. You know, you have 500 yards of total offense, and you're a team like Utah. You got to win that football game. And they weren't able to do it, so they're down to 20. Cincinnati is up 3 spots. I don't know. You know, it's undeserved. I like Cincinnati. I think they're a good team. I think they should be ranked. But, you know, having the game with South Florida where you're around 28-point favorites, you're losing in the fourth quarter, and you're being rewarded by moving up 3 spots, I don't know. I mean, I'm definitely putting Texas in front of Cincinnati. I know Texas has 2 losses. The loss to Texas Tech was close, kind of an aberration in my eyes. I believe Texas Tech was 6 of 8 on 4th down. You know, Texas was without Quinn Ewers. They come back and crush Oklahoma. I'm not going to take a ton of stock into them crushing Oklahoma. You know, beating Oklahoma is not a big deal, but I will say the score and just the domination, although Oklahoma was without Dylan Gabriel. Kentucky, I don't know how they're ranked. I guess the only justification could be that it was their backup quarterback, but I've always thought Kentucky was overrated. They lose to South Carolina. That was not a competitive game. Again, I understand it's your backup quarterback. It's a tough situation, but this is college football. If you lose to a bad team and you're Kentucky, you've already underperformed against MAC opponents as is. You got to get off of the rankings, in my opinion. And then we've got Illinois coming in. It's so stupid that they do rank like tied. Like Texas and Kentucky are tied at 22 because they have the same amount of points. There's no ties in this thing. Just put one of them at 23. But it's got Illinois at 24, so good for Illinois to get ranked. I'm not a big believer in Illinois. Their defense is certainly amazing. That game with Iowa was, you know, just poetic. The over-under, I think, closed at 35.5, and the final score was 9-6. So they could have made the over-under. Imagine Vegas makes it 27. Everyone bets the over, and then the under hits. But Illinois is a team. Chase Brown, he's gotten 100 rushing yards in every game. He's the leader in rushing yards in the Big Ten. Good for the Illini. It's great to see them getting some respect. But I just think their offense in terms of passing the ball, certainly against any solid one of those big 3 Big Ten East teams, you're going to lose, to Michigan, to Penn State, to Ohio State. But it is a nice story, and it's good to see them getting rewarded. And then, of course, they did decide to do it. They did rank James Madison after their, 20-point road win over Arkansas State. They were 11-point favorites. They are now 5-0. They're also 5-0 against the spread, so they're overperforming every single game. Very solid team. Are they a top 25 team according to metrics? No, they're not. But this is how we should do it in college football. We should have fun. We should rank teams, smaller schools that get off to these starts. It is important to note. I don't think this will end up mattering because James Madison, the Sun Belt is actually very competitive this year. I do think James Madison's probably going to finish 10-2. But if James Madison were to go 12-0, they are ineligible for the Bulls this season. And they're also, I believe, ineligible for the Sun Belt Championship. And then the others receiving votes. So I do like that North Carolina, 98 votes. That is a good team. They still have question marks on their defense. Tyler Van Dyke lit them up for basically 500 passing yards. But they got another big win on the road. Baylor, I think Baylor should be ranked. I know they have 2 losses, but they're a good team in my eyes. BYU getting 61 votes. Honestly, anyone that voted for BYU should have their, voting rights taken away when it comes to these AP polls. It's ridiculous. BYU was significantly overrated to begin with, and you've got people voting for BYU over Notre Dame after Notre Dame goes in as a favorite and handles BYU. That game was not as close as the score indicated. I would have Baylor ranked right now. I would have Notre Dame ranked right now. Notre Dame, guys, a lot of casual college football fans who don't actually understand metrics and are just reactionary don't realize that Notre Dame's actually a good college football team. Yes, they lost to Marshall. It was a horrible loss. I understand. It was early in the season. They've got good wins against BYU where they controlled the whole game. They've got a good win against North Carolina on the road. There's a bunch of casual people who really don't pay attention. They don't know. They're just, they lose to Marshall. They're horrible. they really don't understand it. So Coastal Carolina Coastal Carolina just doesn't face anyone. They did beat UL Monroe. They didn't cover the spread. I would not have Coastal Carolina ranked. I know they're undefeated. Florida, I can't do it. They beat Missouri by 7 points. Tulane's a really good football team. If Tulane keeps winning, I would like to see them ranked. Purdue, unfortunately, they have 2 losses. You know, that Penn State Week 1 game is going to really eat at Purdue. They've gotten big wins. That's a huge win on the road in Maryland. Florida State getting some votes. You lost again. I don't see that. South Carolina, no. Washington State now with 2 losses and kind of, struggling against USC. I like Washington State. Their season is going to be defined by the final 5 minutes against Oregon. That's what they should have 1 loss right now. They should still be ranked if they would have 1 loss. Minnesota gets 5 votes. LSU, who knows? I don't think these people even they flip a coin on these games or on these teams who they rank. Maryland with 4 votes coming off a loss. And then San Jose. You know what? I respect the San Jose State. San Jose State's playing good football. The last 2 weeks they've blown out teams, including, a decent Wyoming team. So I respect ranking San Jose State over ranking LSU, for sure. Absolutely. But guys, that is the top 25 college football update after week 6. That's going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on Twitter. Link to that is always in the description.